From the start, the population myth was a propaganda tool for colonization. The British used it to justify mass famines in India. The US used it to justify forced sterilizations of Native Americans. It is part of dehumanization propaganda. Too many mouths to feed, too many brown bodies. The overpopulation myth was created by white supremacists. Thomas Malthus would say that poor people will just breed themselves into misery. The cognitive dissonance is alarming. We brought them civilization. Roads were built to extract goods. They don't even go in the right places. They go from weird places like mines to ports, not where people live. Education was actually the violent dismantling of indigenous knowledge, of diversity of thought, and the forced assimilation into British culture. Christianity was a weapon used to break your spirit, not to save it. They brought chains and called it freedom. They brought violence and called it progress. Natives couldn't manage their own resources. Tell that to the African kingdoms that you destroyed, that had their own trade systems and irrigation systems and architecture that was way better than anything the British had ever seen. Ireland under Breton law had communal land ownership and no jail. India had universities and a GDP that was larger than Britain's. They dismantled functioning systems to install their superiority, which is chaos. The British Empire was not natural order or inevitable. It was not evolution or human nature. It was starvation, it was slavery, it was weapons, it was mass destruction. The fittest were the ones with capital. The rest of us just had our dignity. The empire was not inevitable. It was engineered by greed. Overpopulation was not causing famines. The export of food by the British was. The scorching of earth. The prioritizing of cash crops to make fat rich men fatter and richer. Nobody needed sugar or tobacco. Now we're fucking stuck with them. The overpopulation narrative is eugenics. If you believe this, you are a white supremacist, whether you realize it or not. You have been ideologically compromised. In 1974, Nixon explicitly linked overpopulation to exploitation in the global south and the expansion of US strategic and military interests. Population control has been used to justify forced sterilization, mass extermination, birth control without consent, and economic coercion. Overpopulation is panic narrative. It is radicalized, weaponized, deliberately coercive propaganda. It is factually false. Birth rates are falling off a cliff. By 2100, not a single country in the world will have the population to replace the dying people and maintain itself. Overpopulation is narrative that justifies land grabs from India to Ethiopia to Ireland to England itself, enclosures, was mystic mythology internalized to enable capitalist aggression. This rhetoric has continued because it enables austerity. How can you argue with a politician who's definitely more informed than you as he explains in complex legal language that we simply cannot afford housing? Overpopulation also fuels philanthrocapitalism. Billionaires funding sterilization programs, family planning in poor countries, not to help, but to maintain geopolitical control. Oh, the empire's over, stop moaning about it. Yeah, the borders still bleed though. The royal family still owns stolen land, and the City of London, well, I've done videos on it. It wasn't dismantled, it was hidden. It was made private. It continues to lord over the rest of us through private equity. Private equity is fancy British legal jargon for things you've stolen and owned illegitimately.